The rain had been falling gently all evening, tapping against the windows like a soft lullaby.
Ellen sat by her bed, hugging her favorite blanket, but something inside her felt too wide awake for sleep.
Her room was quiet.
The walls glowed dimly in the light of the night lamp, casting soft shadows across her books and toys.
She had already read to bedtime stories, counted 30 sheep, and tried closing her eyes, but still, sleep would not come. Outside, the wind hummed through the trees like it was trying to sing her a secret.
Ellen listened. The clock ticked softly.
Her eyelids were getting heavier, but her mind still floated, drifting somewhere between daydreams and questions she didn't have answers to. Then, something changed. A gentle knock came from the window.
Not loud, not urgent, just a tiny tap-tap, as if someone was politely asking to be noticed. Ellen sat up.
Her breath caught.
The curtains fluttered, though the window was closed. She tiptoed closer and peeked behind the fabric. There, outside in the rain, hovered a moth, not just any moth, but one with wings like glowing parchment and a tiny lantern dangling from its neck.
It didn't flap or fly away.
It waited, like it had come, just for her.
Ellen didn't know whether to open the window or simply keep staring.
The little moth outside hovered with such patience, its tiny body glowing like the flame of a candle floating in the air. Raindrops fell around it, but none touched its wings. She slowly unlatched the window. The frame creaked just a little as she pushed it open. The moth didn't fly in. It drifted backward, just far enough to keep her watching, and then turned gently toward the garden.
Ellen hesitated. She looked down at her fuzzy slippers, still warm from the floor. A whisper deep inside her said this wasn't ordinary.
It wasn't a dream either. It was something else.
She pulled on her sweater and tiptoed out the door. Her house was asleep, wrapped in quiet. As she stepped outside, the air smelled like wet earth and distant flowers. The rain had stopped.
The moth floated ahead of her, lighting the path with its small lantern. It didn't speak. It didn't blink. It simply glowed and waited, as if it had always known she would follow. They moved through the garden gate. The wind was still.
No dogs barked.
No insects chirped.
Even the trees stood still, as though they too were listening.
Then Ellen saw it.
A faint shimmer beneath the trees.
Not a house, not a cabin, but something breathing, living, glowing faintly in the dark. She didn't ask questions. She simply kept walking. The deeper they walked, the quieter the world became. Trees rose tall like silent guards, their leaves barely rustling, as if afraid to interrupt the path unfolding before Ellen. The light from the moth's lantern danced gently across the forest floor. It revealed roots like sleeping snakes, stones shaped like forgotten faces, and patches of moss that shimmered softly with dew. Yet through it all, not a single sound came.
No birds, no wind.
Not even Ellen's footsteps seemed to echo.
It was as if the entire forest had chosen to hold its breath.
Ellen followed closely behind the moth. Every few steps, she looked over her shoulder, half expecting her garden to still be there, but it wasn't.
The world behind her had disappeared into the shadows.
Only the glow of the lantern and the memory of her own heartbeat kept her moving forward. Then she noticed something strange. Whenever she tried to speak, even just to whisper, the words wouldn't come. Not because she was afraid, but because the forest wouldn't allow it. It wasn't a place for noise. It was a place for listening. So Ellen listened. She listened to the sound of her breath. She listened to the rhythm of her steps. She listened to the stillness, which somehow felt full, not empty. And then, up ahead, the trees began to part. Between two towering trunks stood something impossible. A great wooden door, standing all alone, lit by the soft glow of stars that peeked through the branches above. The moth paused beside it, its light circling the frame. The door wasn't attached to anything.
No walls, no hinges.
Just the door itself, carved with swirling lines and ancient symbols, like it had been waiting there for hundreds of years, waiting for someone who had forgotten how to dream.
The door stood alone, tall and silent, nestled between two ancient trees that curved toward it like guardians.
Its surface was covered in carvings, swirls and spirals, moons and stars, all etched as if by time itself. Ellen approached slowly. The moth floated beside the frame, casting a soft golden light over the worn wood.
The door was beautiful, but not in the way new things are.
It was beautiful like a story passed down through generations, like a lullaby only the forest remembered. There was no handle,
No keyhole.
just a small, round circle at the center that glowed faintly with a warm light.
Ellen reached out. Her fingers hovered for a moment. She didn't know why her heart was racing.
Maybe it was excitement, maybe it was fear, or maybe it was that quiet feeling, the one that says something important is about to happen. She touched the circle. The carvings shimmered faintly, like they had taken a breath.
Then, with a slow sigh, the door opened inward.
There was no creak, no groan, just the gentle sound of air moving, as though the room inside had been waiting to exhale. Beyond the door was not darkness, it was light, soft golden light, the color of candle flames and whispered dreams. The floor inside shimmered like polished wood, and the air smelled like old paper and rain. Shelves rose high into the air, curving gently, each filled with books of different colors, sizes, and shapes. Ellen took one step forward, and just like that, the door closed behind her, quietly, kindly, as if to say, "Welcome home." Ellen stood still. Her breath caught in wonder. The space around her didn't feel like a room. It felt like a memory, a warm, endless one. The shelves stretched not only upward, but sideways and around, curling gently like the inside of a seashell. Each shelf was filled with books that seemed to glow softly from within, like they had hearts that still beat. She walked slowly between them. Some books hovered slightly above their places, fluttering their pages as if sighing in their sleep. Others rested quietly, wrapped in velvet ribbons or tucked inside small glass domes. Each spine was different. Some had titles in gold lettering, others were blank, smooth, or etched with symbols she didn't recognize. High above, lanterns floated on invisible strings, casting gentle light that danced across the polished floor. Ellen turned a corner and saw something even more incredible. A ladder climbed on its own across the shelves, moving gracefully from row to row like it knew exactly where it was going.
As it passed, a cluster of books opened their covers in unison, like they were stretching, or waiting to be read.
She reached out and touched one. The leather cover was warm, as if it had been sitting in the sun. The moment her fingers met the spine, a quiet hum filled the air like music just beneath hearing. The moth hovered beside her, still silent, but its light now pulsed gently in rhythm with the heartbeat of the library.
Then, in the far corner, Ellen noticed a strange section of the room. No lanterns floated there. No books hovered.
The light dimmed slightly as she stepped closer.
And there, nestled quietly among the glowing shelves, was a tiny wooden case covered in dust. On its label, in faded gold letters, was a name she hadn't heard in a very long time. Her own. Ellen stepped toward the dusty shelf, her fingers trembling just a little.
The name on the label, Ellen Oyek, glowed faintly as she got closer, like the wood itself remembered her. The small wooden case held only one book. Unlike the others, it wasn't glowing.
Its cover was faded blue, with frayed corners and a single gold star in the center.
There was no title, no number, no ribbon, just quiet. She knelt down. The air around her felt warmer here, almost like someone had wrapped the corner of the library in a blanket. She reached out and gently brushed the dust away, careful not to smudge the star. The moment her fingertips touched the book, something inside her shifted, a memory stirred. Not a clear one, not yet,
but a feeling, like sunlight on her face during a nap, or the smell of cookies baking in a house that wasn't hers, but once had been. She opened the cover. Inside, the pages were filled with drawings,
crayon lines, stick figures,
wobbly letters, stories about talking animals and upside-down castles. It wasn't a book she had read. It was a book she had written years ago.
Ellen's eyes widened as her own childhood scrawls danced across the pages. A dream about flying whales, a secret underwater tea party,
a song that only tulips could sing. Page after page of wild, impossible dreams she had once carried and then forgotten.
And now they had come home to her. She held the book close to her chest, and for the first time in a long while, she remembered what it felt like to believe in things without needing a reason. Ellen sat cross-legged on the warm floor, the little book resting gently in her lap. The glow from the nearby shelves dimmed, as if giving space for her story to take the spotlight. She turned the page. It showed a meadow under a sky full of stars, not just dots, but stars with faces and names.
One was called Luma,
another was Drift, and one, with a crooked smile and sparkly freckles, was named Solé.
They weren't part of any real constellation.
They were hers. On the next page, Ellen had drawn herself, much smaller, with wide eyes and a cape made of clouds.
In the picture, she was flying, not on a broom, not in a rocket, but simply floating, carried by laughter and moonlight.
The drawings were uneven, but full of joy. The words were misspelled, but they sparkled with wonder.
As she read, the library around her began to shift.
The floor beneath her shimmered, and suddenly she wasn't sitting in the library anymore. She was there, inside the dream. Stars winked above her in a sky painted with deep purples and glowing blues. A meadow of talking flowers stretched for miles. She heard a giggle, and then another, and then the sky lit up with streaks of flying stars.
She was soaring, light as a whisper, fast as a wish. She laughed, and the sky echoed back with music only dreams could understand.
The stars swirled around her, calling her name with joy, like she had finally come home after a long journey away. It didn't last forever. Dreams never do. But for those few moments, she remembered exactly what it meant to fly without wings. The stars began to fade gently, like candlelight being blown out one by one. Ellen felt herself floating downward, slower now, as if wrapped in a blanket of clouds. The meadow disappeared, the sky dimmed, and the colors of the dream slipped softly into the quiet of night.
She opened her eyes. She was back in her bed. The blanket was tucked under her chin. The rain had stopped. Her lamp glowed softly in the corner of the room, and everything was just as it had been before.
Almost. Ellen looked to her bedside table. There, resting quietly, was the little blue book. No dust, no fading, just a single gold star on the cover, glowing faintly like it had carried something back with it. Something real. She smiled.
Outside her window, the trees rustled gently, and for a moment, she thought she saw a small light floating beyond the glass, a tiny moth, drifting away into the dark.
She didn't say a word. She just closed her eyes, her hands resting on the book, and let her breath slow to the rhythm of the night. And though she didn't know what dreams would come next, she knew one thing for certain: they would never be forgotten again.